Okay, recording is on now. So everybody here, uh, be mindful now that recording is on. And let me also see.
Okay, this one.
Okay. All right, and now we're just about to go. All right. So hopefully now we're going live as well. All right. So before we begin, everybody, and pardon me, for the late start, a little bit of technical difficulties on my part. But if everybody could too take this moment to send this out to their networks, the same way that you got it. It now should be going live on Facebook as well. All right. But now let's just begin. All right. And once again, pardon me for this late start. All right. So thank you all for coming. We'll have different people coming in at different points during this evening. And, this once again is recorded and also streamcast live. So here we're putting the last thing. All right. Boy. All right. Okay, so now it is live streamed on Facebook as well. And we're here. All right. So peace, everybody. My name is Jamal Crawford. And we're doing this as a function of the Blackstonian as well as mass police reform. But in this age of, talking about police reform, I thought that it was important that we speak to people who have been directly affected by the lack of police reform, mainly those who have either been victims themselves or family members have been victims of police brutality, the killing of civilians, or so on and so forth. Unfortunately, here in the city of Boston, despite what the rhetoric is that this never happens here, which is just not true. Is the reality is that it does happen here and has happened here and far too many times. And so in my quest to kind of bring light and truth to this subject, obviously we have to have a conversation with those who've been affected by the PBD. So tonight we're here this evening with Carla Sheffield, who many of you already know, who is the mother of Burrell. Most people called him Bo, Ramsey. And, without, too much introduction way, I want to get right into it, particularly with this late start. And let's get right into it. And Carla, if you could tell, obviously I just said who you are, but can you just, tell a little bit about who you are and give us a little bit of your story, please?
Okay, thanks for having me, Jamal. I'm glad somebody is doing this because, like me, there are other mothers, fathers out there whose children were killed by police who haven't received any justice, have basically been collateral damage. We've been treated like we've committed some kind of crime. My name is Carla Sheffield. I wasn't born here. I was raised here all my life. I grew up in Dorchester. I went to West Roxbury High School. I got my associates, my bachelor's, and my master's all in criminal justice. I worked at the State House for 11 years. I now work in the Quincy District Court. I have worked in several courts. This December will be 24 years I have been working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So when they killed my son, this hurted so much more because my son, I thought I was gonna be prepared for this, but this is hard. Um, I'm a mother of 5 kids. My son, Burrell, smart kid, loved life, loved to cook, ladies' man, loved his little sister. Got in trouble when he was little, when he was younger. You know, he knew if he did something wrong and he had to go to jail, if he did the time, he was gonna do the crime. If he did the crime, he was gonna do the time. That's what I told all my sons. My sons had their father in their home. I went to school, I worked full time, and I took care of all my children. I could look at the watch on my arm and tell you every night where my children were. When my son started getting out of hand, I went looking for help. I didn't get the help I needed. Um, my son graduated high school with his high school diploma. But during that time, from the time he started working um, a summer job, my thing was for my kids to learn the value of money. So I would take them to places like Salvation Army and let them see that there were people less fortunate than them. We were poor, but we made ends meet. And I wanted them to know the value of that. So when he got his summer job and he had got robbed, his whole attitude started changing. When we reached out for help and we didn't get it from the street workers, from all the programs that was out there, and we didn't get it, the streets helped him. He turned to the street like any other natural kid. But I still kept my foot on my son's neck, on all three of my sons. Um, my son was excited. My son had just been released from prison for doing whatever he did. He was so excited to get his license. When he did, he had his friend's car. I remember him getting his license and calling me on the day and saying, I got my license, can I drive your car? And my answer was no. He kept hounding me, and I said no. His friend had a gold Cadillac. His friend, during their growing up and hanging out, they have been harassed by Boston police, picked up, brought to the police station, questioned, and then released. My son didn't tell me this. I found all this out after the fact. The gentleman who the car belonged to was in jail. So my son was using his car, running his he was excited because he had his license. He wanted something to drive. So while the owner of the car was in jail, my son would take the owner's girlfriend to work so he could use the car and then pick her up and bring her home and help her do her errands just so he could have a car to drive. When my son got out of prison, his first thought was, let me go to school to be a culinary artist. My daughter took him to Bunker Hill College. He filled out all the application process. He had some paperwork he had to turn in. On August 21, 2012, there was a call in the South End. Now, mind you, I lived in Franklin Hill, Franklin Field, and the South End. I moved in the South End in 1999. I lived there for 10 years, over 10 years, actually. My son was driving his friend's car on August 21, 2012, when there was a supposed call that a gentleman was peering into cars. And when the police officer got the call, they pulled over the car my son was in. They said that the gentleman was wearing a red shirt, a red and white, a red shirt, whatever they described the color shirt, it was the opposite of what my son was wearing. So they pulled my son over on Columbus Ave. My son asked the officer, "Why are you pulling me over?" The officer didn't answer him. They had their little banter back and forth. My son had the window cracked about this much. He had already told me on that day, he called me, he asked, I was at work. He said, "Mom, what time you get home from work?" I said, 5 o'clock. I said, 4 o'clock. He said, "I'll be there." When he didn't show up and I started walking out the door, someone from Tent City called me and said, "Tell Carla to get to Tent City. Something happened to her son." So as I'm getting ready to get in the car to go to Tent City, they then called me and said, "Don't go to Tent City, go to the hospital." And that's what I did. When the police pulled my son, when the police pulled my son over on August 21, 2012, it was two officers, a white officer and a black officer. They said that they ran the license plate and the owner of the car had a warrant. So when they pulled my son over and my son asked them why they was pulling him over and they didn't respond, they had the banter back and forth. Then finally my son gave the officer his license. In court, they claimed they did not look at the license. The officer did not pass it to the other officer, who, by the way, was standing there with a warrant with another gentleman's name on it. I find all this out in court, not during the investigation they were supposed to do. So the officer on the other side was standing there with a warrant with another gentleman's name on the warrant. When my son finally gave the officer his Peraway his license, he claims he didn't look at it and sat it on top of the roof. He then reached in the car and tried to grab my son. In the report, his report, it says my son was reaching behind the seat, reaching for something. So when Peraway reached in the car, my son put the car in gear and took off. So then this now became my son tried to run them over. My son drove right into Tent City where he knew everybody knew him. He was going so people could see what was going to happen. He was already fearful of the police. He had already told me that the police were following him. So when he drove the car down Columbus and Harcourt Street and the police chased him, the whole time, when my son jumped out the car and ran, the whole time, Peraway was chasing him saying, "Motherfucker, I'm gonna get you. Don't let me catch you." And he chased him into Tent City. The other officer was running behind, so I guess he jumped in the car because my son left the car, jumped out the car while it was rolling. He put the car in park, and then he began pursuit. So it's two of them running after my son. Some woman claimed she tried to trip my son, but she thought, this comes out after you put the pieces together, the gentleman in the red and white was the criminal, and that the officer in the green, which was Riso, was the police officer. So in actuality, she tried to trip Peraway. My son runs on the horseshoe in Tent City. Now, mind you, I lived at 27 Yarmouth Street. And if you come from the Southwest Corridor, you're going to run right into that horseshoe between 2 Yarmouth Place and 27 Yarmouth Street. My son ran up the horseshoe and he went to a door where it used to be a teen center. And the door was locked, so my son turned around. The story that I got from the street, not the police officers, not their report, the story I got from the streets was my son turned around, put his hands up in the air, and Matthew Peraway shot him. Then it went on the news. So when they shot him, all the kids who knew my son, there was a woman who was looking out the window. There was an 8-year-old, I think she was 6 at the time. She heard a commotion under the window and she heard arguing, and she called her mother to the window. They couldn't really see, but they heard, and she knew my son's name because my son loved kids. And she said, "Mommy, somebody's doing something to Bo." There was another woman who watched them shoot and kill my son. But the way the police went and did their investigation, they intimidated everybody. One woman saw them put handcuffs on my son, but because she spoke Spanish, and she would not say that there were no handcuffs, she felt harassed. She picked up all her belongings and moved. I still see her son to this day, and she said that she would stand up for me if necessary, but I couldn't find her during the time of court. There was also a couple of people, the security guard on duty. Now, I lived in Tent City for 10 years. Where they killed my son at was a camera. Out of all the cameras in Tent City, how come on that day my son was killed, that's the only one not working? That's bullcrap. I lived there, and anytime a camera went out, there was Johnny on the spot to get that fixed. I was told by two people who failed to show up in court. One is terrified, and the other one walks around here. I'm not going to say his name right now, but when in time it will come out. But he walks around here like he's all for Black Lives Matter, and he's this advocate for justice. And he had information that Commissioner Gross took the tape showing that this police officer murdered my son. Commissioner Gross took the tape and went to deal with his son, because at the same time my son had got shot, his son was breaking and entering in the daytime as a felony with a gun. And so he took the tape and went and dealt with his son. He slid his son into a rehab or did whatever he did with his son. My son went to a grave. They end up taking my son to Boston Medical. From all the witnesses there, they said they did not give him CPR. There was only one shot. But then when you get to court, you'll see there's a piece of paper. And well, when they so-called had me come in and look at this evidence, they put a blank 8x11 piece of paper in there. And in the middle of it was a square. And it looked like it just had letters and numbers that just ran together. No date, nothing else. And I was told that that was a blotter that recorded the sounds of gunfire when it went off. So my thing is, what are you putting this in here for? I don't understand that. Does that mean two guns went off? What are you trying to say? Is this supposed to back your claim that two guns were fired when in actuality, everybody testified that it was only one shot fired? The thing that really annoys me is that the police report was 4 lines. It says a police pursuit took place, the call was called off, the officer, department issue gun went off, and the gentleman was pronounced dead. 4 lines. I work in the court, so I found that difficult to believe that that's all that happened. So not only was it a 4-line report, I was told that they went through my son's pocket, they handcuffed him, they threw him in the ambulance like he was a dog, did not give him chest compressions. So when I went to the hospital, I never went to the scene. I went to the hospital and they brought me in this room. In comes Detective Sullivan, and he stands there and he says, "I'm Detective Sullivan, I'm from homicide." In my head, I'm saying, okay, he's from homicide, he's gonna investigate this. And then I'm sitting there for a while and the doctor comes down and all the stuff is playing in my head of what everybody's telling me. The doctor comes and she says to me, "Miss Sheffield, I'm sorry. I didn't know until after I got the call." I looked at her and I'm like, "What call? And had you got the call earlier, would my child still be here? What call did you get?" Nobody can't seem to remember her saying that, but I know she said that. Then she said she took over chest compressions from whoever was in the ambulance. That's a bald-faced lie because none was given. And then in court, you find out that the autopsy or the expert witness said when he was shot, it killed him instantly the way the bullet hit him. So if it killed him instantly, how are you going to say you gave him chest compression? You saw him die right there, and then you still lied about giving him chest compression. It took a long time to get, when my son died, I called the NAACP. I cried into Michael Perry's phone. I called all the autopsies place, the one on Harrison Ave and the one down in the Cape. I cried in everybody's phone for the legislatures, everybody, for somebody to call me and give me some help, and I got nowhere. I then started writing. I went to the Peace Institute. They helped me fill out a victim's paper. I sent that in. Before the investigation even began, I got a letter back from them stating that my son was in the commission of a crime, so I do not qualify. I then wrote them a letter saying, "Well, that's funny. I don't know where you got your information from, because according to the police, my son was killed in a routine traffic stop." So then they sent me a letter rescinding their denial and giving me a victim compensation number. After the police investigated the police and cleared themselves, I then got another denial letter. I couldn't find an attorney to represent me. I work in Quincy Court. Some of the attorneys there was like, oh, I can't talk to you because they know the officer who killed my son. The first thing that was said to me was the officer's from a good family. So what are you insinuating? My child's not? My child comes from a two-parent home. Both his parents are educated. He has a high school diploma, as all my children. So to insinuate that because he's an officer, he's from a good family and mine ain't, that was another slap in the face. The fact that Marty Walsh can't even admit, granted he wasn't the mayor when it happened, but you hear and you see what has been taking place. And if you're a mayor, you're gonna make sure you know what's going on in your city. If not, then you shouldn't be the mayor. So for you to keep continuing to say that you're not like Ferguson and you're not like Minnesota, you need to do some homework. My son was killed here along with, I actually did a report, a chart that shows 41 Black African-American Latino men were killed by police officers, and not one officer has been charged, ever. Then we get to court, which was a joke. I go to school. I spend thousands of dollars to get an education because I want to make the justice system work. I want to put criminals behind bars, but it was a slap in the face to see what was done to me and my son. There was no jury of my peers. Police officers wore their uniform in the court as support while they intimidated people who came to support me. They paid for an expert witness to get on the stand. He got on the stand and lied. So why are you spending my tax dollars for an expert witness to get on the stand and say whatever the hell the police want them to say? That is not justice. That's not ethical, and it shouldn't be legal. Anytime, any evidence that they used in court that their attorney used, they could marinate it, they could just put adjectives in, they could do what they want. They even called the judge in from Dorchester who gave her opinion because she happened to be on the scene that day. A civilian who at the time, and I want this investigated, I want her charged with perjury because she got on the stand. When my son was killed, she was a civilian. When it came time for court, she was a police officer of 4 years. Then she got on the stand and said that I threatened her. Oh, you should see the charges that they gave, that I defrauded the government when I filed for victim compensation and threatened this woman because I came to her house knocking on the door saying that she better tell my attorney what she knows. I never met that woman before a day in my life. The first time I saw her was the day she sat her ass on that stand and said that I came to her door. But she's a police officer today. The judge, his bias, all judges, they need to be removed. It's long to, they sit there, they have this tenure that makes them, they don't give a shit, first of all. They've been there so long, it's just a paycheck. They have their unconscious and their conscious bias leading their decision. First of all, when I sat through the jury selection, there was about 40, 50 people in there. I guess everybody thought that I was a juror too. 2 people in front of me, a white woman and a white man, were sitting there debating how they were going to get out of jury duty. I sat and listened to them. I am going to raise my hand for every question that the judge asked so I can get out of jury duty. The gentleman got sent home. She became juror number 12. Few of the questions they asked during the jury process was, if the person was from a low-income family, would you be biased? A third of the hands went up. If you are related to, work with, or know a police officer or married to a police officer, raise your hand. Half the jurors raised their hand. There were 3 Black jurors in there. All 3 Black jurors were excused. They finally picked the jurors. The case starts. Juror number 4 slept twice during the proceedings. I already told you about juror number 12. And juror number 7, after they put the verdict in, she cried like she was forced to go with them because they didn't want to be there. The trial was supposed to last 7 days. It lasted 6 days. Anytime my attorney got evidence to to refute against the police. The judge would rush him, hurry him up, object, all kinds of stuff. The same evidence that the police were able to use, they denied my attorney from using. After all is said and done, they're found not guilty. The officer has changed his story 4 times. First, it was said that my son turned around and fired a shot at the police officer, which caused him to return fire, shooting my son in the chest. So when I get the autopsy report and see that my son has a hole on his side, then the officer's story changed that my son had a gun and got a drop on him. So the gun that they admit into evidence, first of all, does not have my son's fingerprint on it. And then the autopsy shows that my son has no residue on his hand, so he did not fire a gun. They were trying to keep the autopsy from me, but it was delivered, hand delivered to me. It said that my son had bruises on him also. So we got in the court. The judge was allowing him to use whatever evidence as his leisure, as he wanted, but was refraining from my attorney using it. They called an expert witness, and it was a doctor. So now I told you there was this tape, and because I don't know if they knew, but the tape had been taken, so the police believed they were in the clear. My attorneys hired an investigator, and when he hired this investigator, he was looking at some footage. And as he was looking at footage, he saw at the same time the officer shot my son, there was a gentleman walking up the walkway towards the back of 130 Dartmouth Street. And as the gun goes off, he drops his bag and he runs. In that video, up in the corner, you can see my son standing with his hands up and the officer pointing a gun at my son. It showed in court the officer pulling the trigger, my son's head dropping back and going to the ground. They played that over and over and over again. So when their expert witness got up and said that the officer's story could not be true because the officer said, my son turned around and shot at him, and the view of the picture would have shown that my son's elbows, if he was turning around, would have been pointed at the officer, and they were pointed at the door. But they then start treating her like a hostile witness and discredit her testimony. But the other expert witness who goes around testifying for the police has not found one police officer at fault and has been challenged on some of his expert testimony. They elevated him. So the whole thing from beginning to end, they didn't investigate to get the truth. They investigated to clear the officer. They were hoping that I was going to be this black woman who was tired of the fight, who was tired of the pain, who was tired of the bull crap, and was just gonna let it be, but I'm not that. I'm not letting this die. I am going to fight until my son get justice. This officer, and they said if I call this officer a murderer that he can sue me. This officer killed my son in cold blood and got away with murder, and the court system and City Hall and the laws that y'all have on this book is allowing it. And then for him to get qualified immunity, I look on Facebook and see him in the yard playing with the day he killed my son. He got to go home to his children and his wife. He got to go to his little backyard. I got nothing. I got no sorry. I got nothing. I got my son as a criminal. Then I got police officer posting racist shit. Nothing was done with him. This officer ended up getting an award. For what? Award for what? For killing my child? So why am I paying taxes? I saw that I paid, I think 12% of my income goes to police department. For what? They're not protecting me. They didn't protect my child. I want my 12% of my taxes back. I want what's due me and my child. Justice. The judge that's on the bench should not be on the bench. There should be more attorneys standing up for mothers like me. We shouldn't have to flip through a fucking telephone book to get some assistance. The community did not back me. I'm not going to say the community. There was a handful of people who backed me. But everybody was out there, from Michael Brown and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. What about Burrell Ramsey, who was killed before all of them? You all swept his shit under the rug and thought you was going to get away with it, and it silenced me. I couldn't talk because, oh, it's in court. They might use it against you. Now you can't talk because you're going to appeal. Oh, you can't appeal because you can't afford it. It's how much? $1.15 for a transcript, and it's 1,000 pages in a transcript. You all, they do this so you can give up hope and you can stop fighting, but I'm not going to stop fighting. What they did to my son was pure murder, and what they did in court was injustice, and I want justice for my son, period. I have gone through the Peace Institute. I have dealt with my anger. I've created this toolbox. I've learned how to advocate for my son. You can call me this black angry woman all you want. I've done the work. I've done my soul searching. I have forgiven the crap that I have gone through, but I am not going to forget, and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to make change. I've been fighting about posts the whole time. It's going on 8 years. 8 years next Friday it will be that my son has been in the ground. And in those, I'm not going to say the whole 8 years, but out of those 7 years, I wrote a letter inviting these police officers to come out to my son's day. They have not showed up once. I was the one that was saying, let's bridge the gap between these police officers and these gentlemen, so that I wanted to show them that the men y'all used to, the kids y'all were arresting back then, they are now fathers. They're not all into that. So what, they're smoking their weeds, but they're not all into that. Let's come out, start over, and do this all again. I couldn't get one police officer to come out there. Last year, somebody came out, and that was to harass folks, make them move, even though I had all the proper permitting. It continues to go on. I've invited, I get no response. I feel like they treating me as a criminal. Nobody wants to have a conversation with me. I didn't do shit to y'all. I didn't take anything from y'all. I am a citizen. I work the election every year. I'm a faithful citizen that y'all ask everybody to be. So why am I getting the shaft? Why am I getting the shit treatment? I'm trying to build just like them. And I feel, for one, that police brutality and street crime need to be worked in unison, not one at a time, because you can't do it like that. There's so much that needs to be done. Post needs to be done. They need to take lie detector tests. A lot of them police officers are smoking the same marijuana they keep locking these kids up for. They need to all be rehauled. My biggest thing is supervisors need to start being demoted. Their pay needs to be cut. If you have an officer who has done something and then he's back on the street and he does something else, where's his reprimand? Where's his punishment? What have you taught him not to do again? Nothing, because you put him back on the street. You're saying this is okay. And so if you think this is okay, then you shouldn't be in your position. I can go on and on, but I'm starting to look like this black angry woman. So I have to rein it in. There's so much that needs to be done. Commissioner Gross talks almighty and high, but my thing is, he said, see something, say something. And then when somebody says something, he got real indignant with them. You can't have it both ways. So you need to figure out if you want the community's help, and if that is the case, the community needs certain things from you. You have to be willing to give it. You walking around this town with your chest poked out like everybody loves you. Everybody loves me. I don't love you because I don't know you. And I've been in this community for 54 years, 55 years. Another thing that happened is when my son was killed, the police department made sure to send a whole bunch of higher ups over to the south end to make sure that white community felt safe and wasn't emotionally hurt or traumatized. But then they sent the oldest police officer they had and this young officer who was standing in the middle of a room of black folks who had no knowledge about my son's case, who was saying, oh, I know the family very well. We just want to keep the tension down. And I know Burrell. Burrell was a something in his program, and I know the family well. So I said to him as he's making this grand speech, so who am I? And he's like, oh, ma'am, I don't know who you are. I said, I'm Burrell's mother. So how are you going to stand in the middle of this floor of all these black people and tell them you know Burrell well, and you don't even know who I am? Why'd they even send you here? To make the situation worse? because you came with no information. You came with nothing. I had no police officers' names at this time. It was a shit show. It was a joke. They did an investigation to clear the officer, and that's just what they did. But I'm not going to fight until I get justice. And my thing is, they are fighting to have all these cases reopened. I think they should be. I'm fighting for a new trial. The first trial was a sham. I didn't get the justice that I deserved. According to 9 of the 12 justices, the decision that the judge made was wrong. And I want a new trial. And I hope to hell I can get the community and everybody else to stand behind me and fight for this. I'm not against police officer. I'm against bad police officers. Just like there's bad criminals, there's bad police officers, and you got to weed them out of both situations in order to make our streets safe. And I am willing to do that. But I'm not going to allow them to just put my son in the grave and keep saying that Boston is not like anywhere else when we are.
So first of all, obviously, want to acknowledge what you and your family has gone through. It's the initial circumstance is tragic, and then everything else that has happened since only compounds the tragedy. This is like the reason that I do this is because too many people don't know the real stories. There's a thing where when these stories are told to people, they're not humanized.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is Bo not humanized, but they act like Bo was hatched out of a the lone survivor of a planet or something. Like he didn't have a whole thing around him. Right. And so it's not just the impact on one, but it's the impact on many, and then the community, and then this being part of a larger thing, and so on and so forth. So, right now trying to dissect it, and you did a lot. I mean, you answered a lot of the questions in the thing in terms of what happened that you felt as though was wrong, what you want to see happen in the future. And right now, if I could, I would just like to focus on what I know happens a lot, which is the further victimization and the criminalization of the family, so that after this happened, if you could just go a little bit more into the treatment that you received and the levels of harassment that you received after this, fell in your lap that you had nothing to do with.
Oh, so let me see, my son was killed August 21st, and then 3 months later it was my birthday. I had just went and got my car fixed because one of my headlights was out. I didn't want to go out because I had not lifted my head off the pillow because my son had just been murdered. I did not want to go out for my birthday, which falls on the 21st. Every time the 21st rolls around, I go through something. But they forced me to go out. So as I go out, I go over in Quincy somewhere with my family. And then as I drop my sister off, I must have hit a pothole because the light on my car went out. So as I'm coming down, I can't think of the name of the street. It's off of Harvard Street. It's that side street on Washington and Harvard and Four Corners, that first side street right there. As I'm coming down, the Dakota runs off of it. So as I'm coming down this street, there's a police car parked at a house over there. I stop at the stop sign. I proceed to go. I get all the way home to 24 Center Ave. A week later, I get a ticket in the mail that says my headlights out. I think it was a $60 ticket. My headlights out, and I need to fix it. I was immediately livid because my thing was, it said public safety concern. So I was livid because my thing was, if it was such a public safety concern, how come you didn't get out your car and pull me over? Am I not the public anymore? So I wanted to go fight the ticket, but my anxiety was through the roof. Every time I saw a police officer, a blue siren, a red siren, I would jump out my skin. So I couldn't fight this ticket. I ended up just paying the ticket. Then as I finally am told I have to go back to work, I go back to work at Quincy Court. I work in the clerk's office. They decided to put me in the department that deals with sons who are overdosing. And I had to tell them I can't be here right now. As I'm going to work, I had police officer cruisers following my car, and I'm watching them following. I pick up my phone and I call Quincy Court, and I'm like, I don't know why the police officer is following me. As he sees I'm talking on the phone, he veers off. I lived at 24 Center Ave. 24 Center Ave and Center Street runs into each other. There was a call from Center Street that someone was shot. They respond to 24 Center Ave with an attitude. When they got to the door, I didn't open my door. I went to the window. I was like, can I help you? They was like, we got a call, someone was shot. I was like, not here. And this was like recently after my son was shot. I was like, no one was shot here. They started arguing back and forth instead of going up the street to see if the shot was called from there. I started doing things for my son and doing the field days and whatever over there. First it was I couldn't get a response. I couldn't get a permit because I had to go through all these different people. I had to go through the police community group and get them to sign off on, which I couldn't get any of them to respond back to me. I sent numerous letters, nobody would respond. I was told that, or heard that they didn't know what to do with me. And my thing is, I'm not something you do something with. I'm a human being that wants to have a goddamn conversation about the murder of my child and how we can fix it moving forward. Point blank. I feel like my sons were harassed. Their friends were harassed all the time, moving forward. I got this attorney, and I feel like I went on an interview for a clerk magistrate's position in the Commonwealth. I wanted to go to another position in the court. I wanted to be a clerk magistrate. And we were calling out Dan Connolly at the time for not prosecuting any police officers ever. And he had this big thing at 12 Baptist Church. I went on this interview, and when I got there, there was a judge from Dorchester. He was sitting there. I don't know why he was sitting there. Dan Connolly was sitting there to interview me for a clerk magistrate position. When I walked in, I knew I wasn't getting a position because I knew he wasn't supposed to be there. There was a judge and a few other higher ups from the court. They had my resume blown up so big that it overran the paper, just like when the police were first claiming they were investigating my son's shooting. They had posters that they did, and they blew it up so big that you couldn't read the words. Some of the numbers were cut off, and they post this up. They weren't looking to get information, and this is why they did the little tactics that they did. My daughter, I feel like she doesn't go anywhere. She doesn't do anything. It has damaged her so much to the point that this outgoing social butterfly doesn't leave my house to be with friends. There's no social, and it has nothing to do with COVID. She just doesn't go anywhere. There's no, to compound the trauma that she has already gone through. When she lost my son, my other son was put in a wheelchair from a car accident. So she felt like she not only lost her father, she lost one brother, another brother that's paralyzed, and then her youngest brother. She also, I felt like the treatment that I got, even from the church, I went to I was a member of Morning Star. When my son was killed, I went there and I asked, I had my mother call to see if I can use the church for my son's service. I was told yes. So we were debating back and forth on what day we were going to do it. And so I picked a day, and then they called me back, and I had told everybody that it was going to be this day. And they called me back and they said, if you can switch your date to this day, we'll give you the day, and you can have it. And I said, okay, I'm going to come down and sign the paper on Tuesday. The day was supposed to be on a Friday. I get down there on Tuesday to sign the paperwork. This is after I call all my family and tell them, rearrange your flight. The funeral is going to be on this Friday. I get to the church, and the women there tell me, okay, no, you can't have the church. You need to do your service, have the wake one day and your service the next day. I said, that's not the conversation we had. So we went through this whole big old thing. I end up leaving. They then told me I couldn't have the church because at the same time, those 4 girls were killed in the car, and they said that they were going to have one of the girls' services there. So my niece then had to start from the church in Mattapan, Jubilee, and she knocked on every single solitary church door until she got to, I think, is that St. Gregory's down there in Roxbury? I think it's St. Gregory's, who finally agreed to allow my son to have his service there. So I felt like because there was police involved, everybody had already hopped on the fact that it's police involved, so the police are telling the truth. The church, I felt like was saying my son was a criminal, and this is police involved, so we don't want to get involved. So this is what we're going to tell her, because I then end up finding out, they were doing little things for families of homicide. And when I got to the church with my daughter, her last name is Sheffield. I guess one of the members in that church had, one of their grandsons had been killed by somebody whose last name was Sheffield. So the church began treating my daughter like crap. And I couldn't understand why she was getting bad treatment. And it later comes out that one of the deacons in there, or whatever her title was, thought that the person who killed her grandson was related to my child. So my daughter got all that church backlash at the age of 8. I haven't stepped foot in Morning Star since. I reached out to the pastor to try to have a conversation. He couldn't be bothered. When I was reaching out to the police, they couldn't be bothered. Nobody could be bothered at the time. And now that the killings are still going on, I'm going to use this platform to get justice for my son and fix this broken system. We need to, all these judges that are just sitting there, this whole criminal justice system needs to be defunded and reorged from head to toe, period. It needs some diversity. There's not one black person, black clerk in Quincy Court. Every black person that is in there, other than myself, works in probation, as if that's the only place black folks are going to frequent when they come to court. The jury system, the picking of that, this whole system needs to be overhauled. From the hiring of the police to the unions, posts should be implemented. It should have it should have some teeth in it, that when they make a decision, their decision stands, and that they can make decisions that affect the police. Not only if a police's performance is bad, but it needs to reflect in their paycheck and in their titles, because everybody's hiding behind these titles. Oh, I'm Captain Gross, or I'm Commissioner Gross. Just because you have a title don't mean you know what you're doing or you're doing it properly. We all hide behind titles. Let's come from behind that title. Let's show our individuality. We all want the same thing: safer street, our children to stop being killed by police and people on the street. So how are we going to work together if you don't step from behind your mask, your title, and your ego? Everybody needs to put their pride to the side, even some of these parents, and let's work together to fix this. But in the meantime, I want justice for my son, period.
Absolutely. So at this point, I think, we really got I know, you've done this so much that, you know, you really told the whole story in a real condensed nugget. I wanna open it up and ask if anybody has any questions or anything to add about, you know, the situation or what happened in the aftermath. You know, in the lens of, you know, we're trying to address these issues as a matter of, you know, police reform and figure out solutions, you know, to a lot of this these type of situations. So does anybody have anything that they would like to ask or add on?
Hi, this is Pessoa. Hi, Carla. I've heard part of your stories, but this is the first time that I've heard it in detail, like you told it. And I'm sorry for your loss, and I know how frustrating and aggravating it must be to continue seeing police kill our kids and get away with it. So I just want to offer you my support in that way, and I would just suggest that you keep on fighting. And I want to also thank Jamal for also the work that he's done around it, because change does need to happen. I mean, I'm not saying, we need to get rid of the police altogether, because all police aren't bad. But this problem is, it seems like every time these police officers kill somebody, they get away with it. And that's the problem. When black kids kill black kids, they go to jail. But when police kill our kids, nothing happens to them. And so, I commend you for continuing to fight for your son, and I don't, there's probably not a whole lot that I can do, but if there's anything that I can do, just let me know.
I will. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do intend to take everything that I was talking about my son's story. Like the attorney sent me a flash drive of some of the pictures that they didn't admit into evidence because it didn't favor the police. I'm going to release those pictures. I'm going to tell my son's story in a podcast with pictures, do a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to show everything that I was talking about, and hopefully get that shared and something comes from that. But I'm not gonna stop fighting.
Let me ask you a question. Have you reached out or had an opportunity to reach out to some of those other attorneys that are fighting, helping people, like the lawyer that's working with the George Floyd's family, or Breonna Taylor's family, or any of them other?
I reached out to him at one point, and his response was that he would get back to me, and we never got a call back. I also reached out to policeabuse.com. There was a gentleman who used to be a Boston police officer. He ended up taking some of my evidence and $600 and acting like he didn't know shit. And I was so distraught at the time, I couldn't find all the paperwork that was necessary to prove my point. I even filed something with the Better Business Bureau, but nothing really came of it. Black attorneys, white attorneys, Italian, no attorney was standing up because they heard police involved shooting. Nobody. The only when at the time, Francis King, I ended up getting Francis King as an attorney because my son had an open case, or he was on probation, and there was an attorney in Dorchester here on Dorchester Street down here who called me in, and he's the one who said that there was something not right about what happened to my son, and he introduced me to Francis King. Francis King, lo and behold, I feel like was doing Stalin tactics, because I kept saying I wanted to go in and see what evidence they had for my son, and she kept coming up with excuses on why we couldn't go there. So then I think in December we finally go there, and all this so-called evidence they had was crap. They had a PowerPoint presentation. They didn't have real paper. They didn't have the gun or any of that. They just had what they thought was their evidence. So I was pissed. And I don't think she asked enough questions. So I felt like I was asking the questions that needed to be asked. And then I said I needed certain other things, and she said that she would get them from me. She asked them in front of John Pappas, these are the things that Ms. Sheffield needs, and we would like to have that before we go any further. I don't believe I received those things. Come to find out, the whole time, a year and a half that I had her, first she was sick, then she broke a leg, then she was on vacation. So when I finally fired her, 2 weeks before I had to file a case against the police, she sent something stating that if I didn't file within so many days, I was going to lose my opportunity to file any case against the city of Boston or the police department. I find out not only was she was going into retirement, so she really didn't care about my son's case, but she also worked in the DA's office. There was another gentleman who worked in the DA's office who was an attorney for my son when my son was a juvenile, who also, I don't know if he recused himself because he was in the office at the time Dan Connolly was there and all this was happening. I don't think he did, but the fact that she was an attorney from Dan's office and was sent to me, I felt like that was another kind of tactic for me not to get the answers and the truth that I deserved or was looking for. I don't know why this attorney, I think this attorney honestly believed that she was gonna do right by my son, and she didn't. And so when I had that deadline, I found my boyfriend called. He looked through the pages and just kept calling people, and asked them if they could file it as me representing myself. They didn't have to be my attorney, but just if they would file the complaint for me in my name, pro se, and that's what they did. And then after they start reading through and looking at the evidence, they joined on my case as my attorney pro bono, but then they couldn't do the appeal and I couldn't afford the appeal, so here I am.
Wow.
Have you reached out to Ivan oh God, I can't pronounce his last name.
Espinoza Madrigal from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights.
Right. Have you reached out to him, Carla? Because I know he's worked with Mamleo, with police officers that have had problems, but he's also, you know, the civil rights attorney. He might be interested in helping you.
Okay, I called Mamleo back in the day when this happened. I got nothing from them. I didn't know this gentleman's name. I did call the Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. I called everybody, trust me. I called everybody and I cried, and I know I was incoherent in the phone when I called. So I hung up, pulled myself together and called every single solitary person back, from the coroner down the Cape to Michael Curry to Mamleo. I called everybody. Lately, I have not reached out to anybody because my family just had another tragedy, and I've been trying, and I just bought a home, so I've been trying to adjust. And I got all the stuff from my attorney that's on a disk drive and in envelopes that I just need to sit and put together. And then I'm going to make a mini movie and put out my thing. I feel like going through what I went through, I feel like courts are complicit in clearing cops, and that's going to be one of my titles on my podcast. And that needs to change. Court should be a impartial entity.
Absolutely.
Agree.
All right. Yeah, this is, you know, obviously this is you know, this issue is heavy, and it's you know, these are the types of things that show the cracks in the system and how, you know, justice is not for all, right? And there's so many instances where too many times we are left, you know, in lurch, and it's no you know, no fault of our own, but the system is clearly broken. And, you know, You know, when it's that day that happens where tragedy, you know, falls in your lap with your family or whatever, you know, that's when you find out how broken it in fact is. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. You have to go through it to.
it's
Mhm.
unfortunate, yeah, because I don't think most people think that the system. People will acknowledge, oh, okay, the system is broken. I don't think that they understand how broken it is.
Extent. Right.
Yeah, until something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
right, like wow, like folks ain't even giving phone calls and answers, and like there's no mechanism or nothing.
there's
So
no check
it
and balances. Anybody can get on the stand and say anything. They can even lie and they're not held accountable. This woman is a police officer and she got on the stand and told a bold-faced lie. I never met this woman before in my life, but I intimidated her. And I believe the charges was that I tried to defraud the government and threatened to harm a citizen
yeah,
when they took my child's life.
yeah, these tactics are you know, it's unbelievable, and unfortunately it is not even you know, it's not this is a pattern. This is not, you know, a one-time incident where this happens. Unfortunately, with many of the people that I've spoken with, families and friends and whatnot, you know, they've received, everybody has received the same treatment, and then other folks have also, on top of the horrible treatment, have then also received extra harassment. The following you're talking about, you know, all of a sudden you got, you know, tickets on your cars, and you know, all of a sudden, you know, all of these weird things are happening that never happens, you know, to you, to cousin Freddie, to, you know, it's like, what is all this, you know? All of a sudden it's like a swath of bad luck, you know, and it's really orchestrated, and it's part of the oppression and the conditioning to try to keep people silent and bully them to leave it alone.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, it's sad.
And this is an incident with my youngest son. My son was on the train and he said hi to these two gentlemen. And then he walked away and he said hi to two more gentlemen, and then he was by himself. Those four gentlemen got into a scuffle and a big old fight, and the police went and arrested everybody, even my son. Even though all four gentlemen said my son had nothing to do with it, my son got a charge, had to go to court, was on probation, and had to pay fines and fees. All four people who were in the fight said my son had nothing to do with it, but my son has a record because of that now. This is our court system.
Yep, yep. And these
But
type
yet
of
you want to tell
tactics.
these same kids, go get a job, work minimum wage. Come on.
Yep.
You gotta give them something to look forward to aspire to own, to have, to be proud of. They don't feel worthy, they don't feel humanized because the higher ups keep telling them that they're not. Some of them don't have parents, and all they have is the sheet to show them the wrong way. And if we keep allowing that, it's gonna get worse before it get better. I got four grandsons, and I don't want to have to. I don't want to feel this pain again, and I want to save some mothers from having to go through this in the future. So we gotta figure out something, and it's gonna take everybody.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Hi, Jamal. It's Jeff Durham here. Peace and blessings, and thank you for hosting this conversation. Carla, thank you for sharing your story once again with us. And time again, I hear it over and over again. And we're some of us are on the sidelines as, what's next? And so I like to hear actionary steps moving forward on people like me and others who may be viewing this Facebook Live right now in Boston and also around the world. What can the community do in supporting you? Is there a GoFundMe page that's up where we could possibly put funds together to get an appeal done, to get a lawyer done for you? What actionary steps that you like to see the community provide and assist you with?
Hmm. Cool. I need the community. We need to change some of these policies, some of these laws, like the qualified immunity. I don't have a GoFundMe page. I should do that. Um, I actually need to sit with an attorney and see if I still have a legal right to file for a new appeal. Um, like I don't have a lawyer's degree. I have a master's in criminal justice. I am not an attorney. Although I worked in the court, I've held arraignments, I sat through trials, I don't know the um, proper steps that, like even just trying to file this application, I know that I work in a court and I see many times people come in and want to file a complaint against a police officer, and automatically the folks behind the counter, their hands go up. They want to know why you want to file this. And then it's, so this is something that we can fight to change, is the process on how to file a complaint against a police officer, because of the things, the requirements that you need. I believe it's $35 or $50 or $25 application fee. You need to know their name, their address, and their date of birth, or their social security number. Most of that, 3 of those things you're never gonna get. So how can you file a police report? We need to make it easier for people to file a complaint and not have to go into the court where they're scrutinized and given a hard time and not given the proper information or the proper paperwork to do so. A person should be able to walk in the court and say, I would like to file a complaint, and the officer should be escorting them in there to help him, not against another officer, but against another individual. Officer should be able to walk in with this person and help them file this case, and they make it so much harder. Oh, you gotta go to the police department and get the police report and then take that over to the court. It's like, it's a joke. There's so much that needs to be done. The policy, I would like to have a new case for my son. I just don't know about how to do that. So I am open for suggestions. I was thinking doing the podcast and doing little fundraisers in my yard. Like next month, we're gonna do a speakeasy. Since my daughter has endured all this pain, she has been writing some powerful poems, as is myself. And it's not just us hurting from police brutality. It's all the crime going on in the street, all the killings, the just senseless killing and taking of loved ones. So I was thinking about doing different things in my yard due to COVID to raise funds so I can challenge them in court. But the whole thing would be getting an attorney, and as I said before, not everybody is willing to go against a police officer. So trying to create a database, or like, you know how we have Black-owned, we're trying to let all our Black-owned business be known. We need to publish Black-owned attorneys, and not even just Black-owned attorneys, any attorney who was not afraid to go against a police officer and represent somebody to the fullest. Like, there was none of that. You see Ben Crump and who else? How many people in America, how many people are dealing with I'm dealing with? How many attorneys out there standing up saying, I'm going to fight for this social justice with this family, with this mother, with this child? There's not many. So I think dialogue needs to happen. Policy changes, removal of the whole hiring and vetting process. We need to fill these courts with light-colored folks, Latinos, Indian, Blacks, Italians, not just white folks who are making decisions. And we need to improve the jury system. We need to get a message, a PSA out there that Black folks, stop running from doing your civic duty. It's not hard. If you want to be a part of a decision against crimes against Black folks, then you got to be in that jury box to make that decision. And they feel like, oh, they're not going to call me because I got a felony. So now they remove their felonies. Black folks don't want no part of the courts and no part of the cops. So we gotta fix everything. So much. We need to put a little subgroup together, police brutality. One person's going to tackle licensing officers. One's going to tackle the psychological aspect of police officer and community. One person tackles the hiring practice. Like, there's so much that can be done. And if we do it under one umbrella, even cleaning up our street, like I said, doing it in unison, not first clean up the streets and then clean up police brutality, because that's not going to happen. You already have white police officers walking, even black police officers walking through our community with their chests out, their bad attitude and their tone. They're worse than half the kids they're arrested. We don't need them on the street. And we need to be able to decide, like if I call a police officer to my house, which I would not ever do in this day and age, I want to know that the one that's coming here has some kind of knowledge about a crime, has some kind of compassion, has an understanding for human life, didn't have a bad day. I'm not going to expect for me to call a police officer and his bad attitude, smart escalating person's going to come to my door to inflame the situation, and another life is taken. So we need to be, just like the community needs to weed out what officers are good and what officers bad, just like the officers need to weed out the good and the bad in the community. But 9 times out of 10, officers know the bad people. We don't. We don't know the bad officers, because they keep getting protected and shielded and slapped on the wrist. So this is why I say supervisors, they need to be demoted. They need to lose their title. Titles need to now mean something. If you want to be a commissioner, you need to earn that. You have the education, the training, the attitude for it, the courage to do it, the stamina, the strength, everything that comes with it. And if you don't, then you shouldn't be it. Titles need to matter again. And I think when people start holding their title and their and some humanity and compassion, then things will get better, a lot better. As a little girl, I used to say I want to be an attorney, and then I want to be a judge. I aspired to become that. Now I'm like, I waste my money going to school. At one point I was saying I spent thousands of dollars to get an education for a broken ass system. But then I say, thank God I got that education, because if I didn't, this would be swept under the rug and my son's name would never be mentioned. But it needs to be fixed, because it is broken from hiring practice to higher ups. Everybody needs reorganization, so we can find out those who really want justice. They keep saying justice is blind and justice is slow. It's only slow because you have a human running it. It can be as fast as you want it to go, especially in today's technological world. It's a bunch of bull crap that it's going on. 7 years, it took 7 years for my son. First they kept saying, you're not gonna get that. Those are police officers. You're not going to get that case in court. You're not going to file charges against that officer. How are you going to do that? Nobody's going to allow you to do that. Then I got the charges. Oh, you're not going to get them in court. Then I got them in court. Oh, you're not going to win. I might not have won because they did a Donald Trump. They cheat, they lie, and they stole their way through a verdict that they won. Doesn't make it right. Just because it's on the book doesn't make it true. And if this is what our justice system is going to be built on, lies like the presidency and everything else, then dismantle the shit, period.
Yep.
Carl, I just have one other question. Have you thought about maybe doing finding other parents that have lost their children to police and maybe do a class action suit? You don't need a lot of people to do a class action.
I have. Say that again?
I was asking Jamal if I was wrong about needing a lot of people to do a class action suit.
So let me, so one of the things that happened when my attorney filed the suit, and this is why I'm saying judges need to go, because I feel like this judge, when my attorney first filed this suit, it was against the 2 officers in the city of Boston. In that motion, there was something that the judge had my attorney move something out of the motion, saying that if you take this piece out of the motion, then this would be an easier case to do, as if he was doing his job properly and letting the evidence make a decision. But when my attorney agreed, thinking the judge was giving him sound advice, and took that piece out of the city of Boston not being sued, he then railroaded us and did the opposite of what he said. And I could no longer sue the city. I can only sue these 2 officers, who they then made it clear and easier for them to find these 2 officers not guilty. So the judge erred, and 12 out of the 12 justices, 9 of them disagree with, I should be able to, on that alone, get a new case.
So, you know, on the class action and linking up with other families, you know, that's something that, you know, what I've been striving to do is get, you know, some of the legal folks that I know. And, you know, now there is a new day, because, you know, at the time, the guy that Priscilla was talking about, Yvonne Espinoza Madrigal, he wasn't there at the lawyers committee. And, you know, now the NAACP is headed by, or NAACP Boston is headed by Tanisha Sullivan, who's also a lawyer and whatnot. So I think, you know, there's a new day. There may be some opportunities to go back and try to pull some folks together to think about, you know, what is doable, right? And what could be done about this in this time frame. Class action, I think, you know, could definitely be something. Once again, we just have to, you know, talk to the legal folks to understand statute of limitations and, you know, what the limitations and so on and so forth of the law are. But yeah, that's, you know, that's definitely something that is a good idea and should be on the table, you know.
I have reached out to mothers. I know there's 2 mothers and 1 sister who are willing to speak when necessary.
Okay.
They've been fighting for justice just as well.
Okay.
And one is Hope Coleman, whose son, she called for assistance with her son who was mental health, and they ended up killing him.
Right.
And the other is Rahima Ussan's mother, who was killed up at Walgreens up here.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, so, you know, and in the future too, you know, it might also be good to have a forum, you know, with everybody together, you know, because here in Boston, you know, and the reason, once again, why I'm doing this, and the reason too why it's recorded and all that, is so that people will no longer have the excuse or the lie, I ain't hear about it. See, now what we can do is, you know, oh, you didn't hear about it? Okay, cool. Here's the YouTube link. Oh, here's the conversation we had right here with the mother and the family, you know. So these type of things make it now more difficult to ignore or to run away from, or so on and so forth, because now we're preserving it in a live time capsule.
Yeah.
You know, so for those folks who missed it today, you know, media, so on and so forth, it's a Sunday and blah, blah, blah. So for all those folks who missed it today, it's still going to be there and available. All the media who got the press release will now get the entire video. You know, the same, you know, community list that it was sent out to will now get the entire video. So it doesn't even matter if you weren't there at the particular day and time. You know, it's what do they say? Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right.
So I'm trying to make it almost like ignorance of the case is no excuse, and we're trying to limit their ignorance of the case by putting these things, because, you know, I see the protests and all the t-shirts that folks is wearing, and it got every name from around the country, and you know, and folks are not knowledgeable, aware, or they choose to just blatantly ignore the cases that have happened right here. And I don't know if that's because of their relationships with elected officials or the police or getting grants and this type of thing or whatnot, but folks have literally ignored it and pretended as if it does not occur here.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a vicious lie. So anybody else have anything to add? Questions, comments? Anybody who didn't speak yet?
No, I'd like to just encourage Carla, if you need help with that, I'm sure Jamal or I can help you getting that GoFundMe page up for you. And as well as somebody had asked, had said that the podcast was a great idea. How about change.org? I think that's another great platform that we should visit for you. So we're here. Jamal, just let me know where I'm needed. And let's make it happen this year. And I echo 100% of what Jamal says. It's not going anywhere. And this is now out there. And lastly, Carla, do you have any information on how people can reach out to you, an email address or anything that you want to put on this video?
Yes, it's Carla Ramsey, CarlaRamsey @gmail.com. My phone number is 857-222-6272. I do have a nonprofit, which is Better Opportunities, which stands for BO. And that is liveforbo@gmail.com. Either one of those three you can reach me on. And I thank you for your support. I have no knowledge about podcasts, but I'm getting ready to do my research and learn. I was supposed to sit with a Northeastern student who was going to set me up and show me the ropes, because I really want to do the podcast thing. And then have people from the community just come in and talk about whatever it is they want changed in our community.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add? Just want to make sure. Okay, whoever's raising their hand with the iPhone, just unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say I don't have any legal knowledge or anything like that, but I'm totally willing to come to any event, like a protest or anything you need a physical body there for. I want to be there. I want to help. I don't know what I can help with, but I'm willing to help. And I wanted to say sorry. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. What's your name?
And my name is Heidi. I'm sorry. My name's Heidi. Hi, I'm a mother of 3, and I've had some issues with my older son and the police, and nothing like you, but I just feel horrible from a mother to a mother. I'm very sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Heidi, if you could drop your email in the chat as well, then I can
Okay.
I can make sure. And that goes for anybody. Jeff as well, anybody else who is not already in contact with Carla, please put your email in the chat.
Okay.
So, anybody who'd like to be involved, put that in there. And we'll get that information out as well.
Thank you, Jamal.
Absolutely. All right. Heidi, I'm gonna mute you again. I think that's your phone now, feedback. So okay, so everybody got their thing in there. Yes, exactly. Great. All right, so I think here we're gonna close it out here. If anybody has any final comments, obviously, Carla, you first and foremost. If you have anything that you want to say before we sign off, then I just want to make sure that everybody, has said their thing, and we got this thing in a nutshell.
Can I leave y'all with the poem I wrote? I wrote this after my son was killed. It's called Hey Officer. Jamal, thank you so much for doing this, and I hope you continue to do this because I'll get other mothers to participate. But the poem's called Hey Officer, and it goes like this. I miss my son. I miss my child. You took him from me and hid all the while. I miss my son's face. My heart's in a broken place. You took my son without my permission. Now I'm crying, praying, and wishing that justice be served, because if nothing else is what I deserve. You pretend to protect and serve. You got a nerve. You carry a badge and gun, expect a brother not to run. You wear a uniform, pretending to be a cop. When he asks you not to, you raise your gun and shot. Now I'm left to wrap this around my head. The Boston police just shot my son dead. No words of comfort, you said nothing nice. I hope to hell this haunts you for life. A mystery shooter, I know it's weird. He shot my son and disappeared. It wasn't a child from off the street. It was Boston police that walked the beat. Oh yeah, you said he opened fire, but we all know that's cold, you liar. That's what your super told you to say. It makes it easier to clear you that way. Our children are dropping time after time, but to be shot by police, now that's a crime. Then to say my son's death wasn't violent. It was to me because my life was silenced. As my story comes to an end, how do I tell my 8-year-old police are your friend? You reap what you sow, and just so you know, as Burrell's mother, I'll never let this go. Thank you.
God bless. Wow.
I read that in front of a room full of people, and when I read it, it was dead silence, and I was like, how come it is so quiet in here? And the person who put it on said because 95% of the people in the room were police officers who just didn't have on their uniform. They didn't know what to say or how to approach me. And I was like, good, they got my message.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and also too, I mean, it's a, it's a powerful piece, and it's beautiful, but it's about such a ugly thing that, yeah, I mean, and I'm a poet, so like, but it's a very, that's difficult. Like, what do you do after that? What do you clap? You know what I mean? So it's yeah, but thank you for that. And I'm glad too that both you and your daughter, have used poetry and writing to get some of your feelings out, and that type of thing. It is therapeutic in that way. You know what I mean? So give thanks that you found your voice in that. Well,
I gotta do something so I don't explode.
exactly.
And writing is it.
Exactly. So
Thank you for doing this.
Lauren in the chat said, I used to live in Quincy and work with an old friend of Bo's, so I found out from her Facebook post. I live in Burlington, Vermont now, and I would love more information on how to support. It burns my heart to hear you call yourself an angry Black woman. You're a loving mother, and I am so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, once again, the story is touching. There is support out here, and I understand, oftentimes folks can feel overwhelmed and alone and whatnot, but I don't know how to describe it, but like, it's not a lot of us, right, out there but there is a close-knit circle of folks who really do give a damn and really do want to see justice and really care about, what is right. And those people, in my experience too, from all walks of life, you know what I mean? Sometimes, different races, different cultures, we might think it's a Boston thing and it's a Boston Black thing. And then you find out you got some ally from, India or China or something, who's like, no, that's not right. And, you know, it's the humanity of it all that kind of brings folks together to just recognize what the travesty and the injustice is. And it's just, it ain't right. It ain't right.
And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna stop saying I'm an angry black woman. I'm a black woman who happens to be angry, because I'm not an angry black woman. And I'm justified in the anger that I do have. I just happen to be a black woman.
Well, there's a thing that they talk about, which is righteous anger. So, you know, righteous anger is when you see an injustice, you know, you're supposed to be angry. You're supposed to be outraged. You see what happens in this world to some women or children or innocent people or what, you know, all the craziness that goes on. You're supposed to be enraged by that, you know? So, all right, y'all. I just want to make sure everybody has it. So let me put it here in the chat too. It's Live Forbo, right? The number 4?
Yes.
4,
LIVE, the number 4BO.
Yep, at Gmail, right?
Yes.
And that's also the website too, liveforbo.com.
Yes.
Okay. So let me put those both in the chat as well too, so everybody has that. All right. And with that, we'll close this out. You know, I thank you for being willing to tell your story. I understand it's not a pleasant thing to discuss or to relive. And you know, obviously we're very sorry for the loss that you and your family suffered. And you know, and we're on the side of justice. So, you know, once again, thank you so much. You know, super love to you and the family. And all these folks here who have, you know, now added on, I'll get all this information to you, and anything that we could do to be of service in the future, just please, you know, let us know. And we, you know, we're going to keep pushing.
I definitely will, and thank you for doing this. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much, Jamal. My heart to you.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. So with that, we're going to end out. And please, everybody, you know, got the information in the Facebook, I mean, in the chat. And, you know, there'll be more stuff on Facebook as well. And, you know, thank you all for coming, and just, you know, let's keep the story alive, keep pushing. When the video comes out on YouTube and whatnot, please share the link. All right, y'all. Peace.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you, Jamal. Good night.
Good night.